You met your husband Dean in your early 20s. What was your relationship like?
It was lovely. Dean was or is a really kind and wonderful person. We got together, we met at work, we had lots of similar interests, we had a lot of fun together. I'd been in relationships before that were quite emotionally unsafe, so being with someone who was so patient and kind and gentle was a big change for me, and it was just a really lovely relationship.
How long were you together for?
So we were together for about 6.5 years. So we got engaged at the start of 2020 and then we got married towards the end of 2021.
When did things change for you?
I guess different times throughout our relationship, I did have a little bit of a thought in my head, like, is this what I want? Is this right for me? But I tended to keep it to myself because Dean was so wonderful and there was no red flags in our relationship. Everything was so lovely and nice. And then, we were married for about 6 months.
Ooh.
And I shared with Dean that I really wasn't feeling happy. Something wasn't right. But at the time, neither of us really had the skills to unpack that or to navigate that together at the time.
You started doing improv. What happened there?
I started doing improv as a way just to have fun, and I met a person doing improv. His name's Emmett, and Emmett and I had a really immediate connection. It was sort of like a really playful and fun workplace friendship. There was just something about each other that we were just really drawn to each other.
When you realised you had this strong connection with Emmett, how did it sit with you?
I felt really confronted by it. I was incredibly anxious. I couldn't sleep. I didn't know what to do, but I'd had such a transparent relationship with Dean. We were best friends. Dean and I are best friends. So I told him about it straight away before I'd even really discussed it with Emmett.
What moral dilemma were you facing here?
At the time, I was considering, do I leave my marriage for something else? I was thinking, like, do I break Dean's heart, someone whose heart does not deserve to be broken, to pursue something that might not end well, to just have completely my own interests at the forefront of what I was doing?
Leah, in 2022...
Yo, wait a second. The way she just went to a different person. Hold up. I'm going to need more details, more comments, more everything. I will just say this, in a world that is constantly settling, right? We are more than likely ending up with the wrong people. I was thinking about this today for 2 reasons. One, the amount of people that are dating people right now that they are not going to end up with, right? And I know I sound a little bit like my parents. My parents would say, why do people date in high school? You know, statistically, you're not going to be with that person. And honestly, I kind of get it, even though I did secretly have a boyfriend and a girlfriend in high school. Yeah, I kind of always do think that too, where I'm like, why are you all moving in together, signing leases, doing paperwork? Girl, you know this is not your man. Like, you know this isn't statistically the person you're going to be with, like, just realistically. But I also think in order to actually be in love and to actually learn about yourself, you kind of have to go into every relationship like authentically 2 feet in. So then I kind of feel like we do have to tell those people that we love them and we want to be with them. And you kind of do have to plan for a future, even if you don't think it's serious. But then I think on the other side of it, as I'm older now and I courted in my 30s, I also think after you have after you reach a certain age, you kind of realize like, oh yeah, no. So I think it just depends so much on who you are, right? There really isn't a good answer. It just depends on who the person is. But I would say I saw this TikTok this morning about he was a black man talking about he was talking about being a black person who's pro-black and then not dating a black person. And I think the dilemma with this is like, sure, if you're in a settling bubble and you're so pro-black, you should be with a black person. If you are a gay person or a bisexual person who's like, I'm mostly into women, but I always end up with men. If you're willing to settle, you should date a woman. But that's not what we want, is it? We don't want to settle. We want to fall in love organically with a person, regardless of race and regardless of gender. Like, we don't actually want to openly settle, which is why I think, when you're talking about high compatibility partnerships, you don't get to choose what your person looks like. They're either your high compatibility partner or they're not. And so when you meet people and you come across them and you go, oh yeah, we do have the same values and I am attracted to you. Well, then you can't sit there and say, I'm only going to date a certain type of person. Because you don't get to choose when you meet a high compatibility partner. Like, sure, if you meet them, you don't have to be with them. But if compatibility is so rare, then there's a chance you might never meet anybody again. And then it just feels silly to not be with that person because like they're right in front of you. Right? So like here we are chasing love. Here everyone is complaining about relationship. Here everyone is saying like, it's just so hard to date. And then you finally meet that person and you're going to be like, but they don't fit what I imagined. So like, no, you're not going to turn down the perfect person because they don't look the way you thought they were going to look. Right? You just realize like, oh, I guess looks didn't matter as much as I thought. And this coincides with preference because I got that question the other day from someone who's like, you know, do you think it's wrong to have preferences? Again, I think this needs to be deconstructed and pulled apart because we're so used to settling culture. We're just told like, he has a nice job. She's nice to you. Marry her. And I'm like the bar is literally in hell. Lean Beef Patty was in an interview recently and they asked, hey, what are you looking for in a guy? And she didn't name values. Not really. She didn't name politics. She didn't talk about philosophy or framework. And everyone's like, oh my God, like what she wants is so simple. No, what she wants is a lie. If you sit there and say in an interview, but she doesn't know it, I want a nice guy who's cool. Okay, Habibi, that's not an answer. That's a settling answer. A nice guy who's cool is the automatic duh. The bar is in hell. Like a guy who likes me and wants to be around me. Okay, Habibi, the bar is in hell. Values, voting, religion, spirituality. Let's talk about vegan, not vegan. Like, you know what I mean? Right? Like, hello? Like you have to actually, so when we're asked these questions, and I get it, because I did it too in my 20s, like, oh, Brittany, who do you want to be with? I don't know, somebody who's liberal, somebody who's like queer or cool, or somebody who's like more alt, or somebody who's nice, or somebody who's kind to neighbors. Like, that's all nice, but that's not like really well thought out values. That should just be like, duh, right? Jessa, did you just say you're settling when you end up with a white person but pro-black? No. I'm saying if you decide to say that the only way my relationship can look is how I say on paper before I've met the consciousness for who they are, then you're in a settling relationship, right? So like the TikTok I saw this morning was a black man saying that it's interesting that pro-black content creators always end up with non-black people, right? That was the framework, that was the context. And I'm saying, he's saying you should date black if you're pro-black. And I'm saying you don't know what your high compatibility partner is going to look like. So then if you're only dating, like if that's like, okay, dating a person because they're a skin color is like dating a person because they're a height. You don't know how tall your partner is going to be. You don't know what skin color your partner is going to be. So unless you're settling, you can't make that a requirement of a high compatibility partner because or you can say, I'm going to wait until the high compatibility I partner meet is 6 feet and black for this bubbles context. Okay. And then you accept you might never meet that person. Or so like so I'm saying, instead of saying, I'm going to date this person for their body, I would say, I'm going to date this person for their consciousness and their values, right? Chad said, oh, thank God, I almost passed out. No. So that's why I say, like, even in the bisexual conversation has been crazy lately on my side of TikTok. You know, all these women who are like, oh, all these bisexual girls always end up with men. They always end up with men. They're really straight. They're not really straight. They're just more compatible right now in the state of the world that it is, meeting men. And also statistically, they're going to meet more men. And also statistically, they're going to deal with because again, even in a homophobic world, you'll have more men who are okay dating bi women than you will meet women who also date women because of the way the world is. So then it's like, yeah, but those bisexual women are often settling for these men because these men are actually homophobic and are only okay with her being bisexual because it's a fantasy. So it's also like how many bi women are also settling for these men who are okay with that they're bi because these men are actually homophobic and don't care and don't count gay or women on women relationships. So instead of all of this, the idea is, and relating it back to this woman's story. So she's in this wonderful relationship with her best friend of 6 years. They're so in love, but then she meets this other person and realizes like, oh, this is what I'm looking for. Did she end up with this person because it really is her person? Or did she end up with them because they were comfortable and it was like settling? Right? And that's why I question people when they're like, when they're either like afraid to find love or they're focused on finding love or love has to look a certain way. It's like you're putting a lot of constraints and none of them are values. Like none of them are ethics or morals. Or it might be a value, but maybe it's a superficial value. Like he has to have a 6-pack. Is that really like a requirement? Are you really going to make a 6-pack a requirement of your partner? A 6-pack? Like, can we talk about shallowness in relationships again? Because we used to talk about it. We used to say like, hey, you're being really shallow, that you have to have somebody, can we like talk about it again, please? About how shallow it is to be like, oh, this person has to have a 6-pack. A 6-pack? Like, please be so for real. What does a 6-pack have to do with whether or not they're going to be there in the hospital for you, or whether or not they're going to love your children, or whether or not they're going to raise, your kids, with you, or like whether or not they're going to vote? Like, what does a 6-pack have to do with anything? And they'll say, oh, but Brittany, a 6-pack is a reflection of my lifestyle. Is it? Is it, or is it just the consequences of the lifestyle, which is different, Or is it different, right? Chad said the road to pro-blackness by people who don't have access to black partners should have been considered by the TikToker. I think, to be fair, if the TikToker wasn't being the most insightful, I just thought it was like a funny, like, I don't think he was even attempting to be insightful. I wish I didn't save it because I didn't even think I was going to talk about it. But I think he was trying to poke a bit, but I don't know his content. So maybe he was just trying to be funny. I don't know. Discord said, I feel like people preferences is the result of two things: the social credit that can gain from being with a certain type of people. Oh, definitely. And the possible values that they signal, but people don't even know that their own values seriously. And people can signal the right things and hold the worst values. Exactly. Okay. So then, because I watched The Guardian do a man versus woman dating video today, and I can't show it on stream. The Guardian's always taking down my stuff, but I wanted to think about it. Maybe I'll get around the editing a little bit and show some clips. But the thing that's interesting about the Guardian article is that they said like, dating is so bad out here and dating is so awful and women are so superficial. Everyone's just so superficial now. Guys, they've always been superficial. What an ignorant thing to think that past generations weren't superficial. Guys, I don't know what you think child marriage is, but it's superficiality. Oh, my grandma had to be married at 10 years old because otherwise the village wouldn't have children. Superficiality. It's not about ethics or morals. It's about the superficial idea of we have to make more babies. We have to have babies who work the land. Like, what's more superficial than bringing a baby into the universe so you can dress it up in Disney characters? What's more superficial than marrying off your daughter so you can buy land? What's more superficial than bringing two families together? Like, superficial to me means without substance for shallow reasons, not love or dignity. It's, you know what I mean? So like everything is so superficial right now. Hello? Anyways, okay, let's go back to SBS.
Your partner showed you something funny on his phone. What happened?
We were looking at funny reels. It was a Sunday morning, taking it easy. He received a message from a good friend of his who was a friend of his that I really, really liked as well.
Uh-oh.
And he opened the message and inside was a photograph of his friend taking a selfie with a woman who was not his partner in a bed behind him, naked. And I saw that photo.
What was your partner's reaction?
My partner's reaction was split second. He took a sharp intake of breath and threw the phone across the room and said, "You didn't see that."
Did he tell you what to do at that point?
He did. I said, "We need to tell her." And he said, "You won't say anything." And we got into an argument.
Oh! How did you feel about him asking you to stay quiet?
I saw a different side of my partner. My partner's from a
This is why you have to talk about this beforehand. That's what I'm saying, girls. That's exactly what I'm saying. Where is the values? Because if that happened to me in my life now, my partner and I would have the same reaction. That's what I'm saying. I cannot be with somebody who's going to have a different reaction to this situation. We have to have the same reaction. I don't take that so literally, but like we have to have the same frustration and upsettedness and value reaction. This is exactly what I'm saying. Oh, no. Do not tell me to keep quiet.
an ethnic community, an international community, and I really saw that protecting bros aspect of that culture in play. And yeah, I didn't really like what I saw.
Were you able to sort of let it go, what you'd seen?
I tried. and I couldn't.
No.
How often were you thinking about it?
I was thinking about it constantly. It was consuming me. It was so heavy. It was just such a heavy thing.
That's what I'm saying. Where is that burden that people don't feel? The weight of the burden. That's why I'm like, oh my God, telling people, like people telling me like the bad things they've done. I'm like, you have just given me a burden that wasn't even mine to carry. And now because you're doing something unethical, I am carrying this burden. Do not put me in this position. Because like now it's on me to do the right thing. And that burden is so heavy.
And I felt so angry.
And then they get mad at you like, oh, I trusted you. I told you this thing. Habibi, there are so many other people you could have told. A therapist, a doctor, somebody who can't tell nobody. You told me. And now you're putting me in this moral dilemma. God forbid I ever see this woman in public. You think I'm not going to tell her? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, how could you put me in front of a woman that is openly being cheated on? You expect me not to tell her? I think one of the most horrifying stories I ever hear about people who cheat is when everybody knew and nobody told them. I would be mortified if you all knew I was being cheated on and you didn't tell me. Not you, the audience, just friends and family. If my partner was cheating on me and my siblings knew or my friends knew and none of them told me, you know what I mean? Like, how could I even trust those people again? How could I even trust you?
Because it was a moral dilemma that had been dumped in my lap that I never asked for. It was a pure...
Exactly, chat. And what does it say about your partner that their friend feels proud to share that? Exactly. And what does it say about her partner that, because that, I bet that wasn't the first time.
accident. And suddenly it was my decision.
How long had this couple been together for?
I think they'd been together just over a year and they were moving in together that weekend.
See, moving in with people. See, this is why I say, be careful. You don't need to live with your boyfriend. You can, I trust you, you're an adult. And you really don't need to be moving in with people. Okay? Like you can if you would like. I don't think less of you. I trust you. If you go, hey, Bray, I'm moving in with my boyfriend. Hey, great. But I want you to know you don't have to until you really go through, until you have other reasons, like until you've had harder conversations. Because sometimes I think people move in with each other. I did it in the past where I moved in with them before I even started dating them. Or I moved in with them before I really had the hard conversations. I'm saying it's okay to have the hard conversations before you move in with somebody.
Did you then question your own partner's fidelity, I guess?
Absolutely. I thought, if this lovely guy who I get along so well with felt so free to send that photo to his friend, what is my partner sending to him?
Ooh.
And it dented the relationship.
What did you consider when you were weighing up what to do?
What hung in the balance were all the bonds that existed. I really got along well with my partner's friend.
Okay, and I will say this, because chat, okay, here's the thing. Because chat said, I would question my inner circle and like would I need to find a new one? Let me tell you this, I cannot replace my inner circle. So that's what I'm trying to say. My inner circle cannot be replaced. I can only just stop talking to them. When I say inner circle, I mean like myself. Like guys, I cannot not know myself. Like I can't have not a relationship with myself. So not having a relationship with my inner circle is like not having a relationship with myself. Does that make sense? So the way I look at it is like I can't replace my inner circle. I can only stop interacting with them, but they will never be replaced. So the issue is, and this is, I think, the struggle of what I saw this video on autistic friendships and why they also have this delineation. And it's because of the way that you feel, right, with people. But like none of the people that I ever dated ever became inner circle. A lot of the friends that I have are just not inner circle. Like I love them, but you're not inner circle. Like, yes, I would hang out with you more if I hung out with my inner circle less, but it doesn't make you inner circle. Because for me, inner circle is not something I chose. I didn't get to choose my inner circle. It's like the same way that I don't get to choose my high compatibility partner. They just are or they are not. And so I think it's hard to explain because it sounds like a choice when we live in a world where people are settling all the time. And so they're like, yeah, I chose my friends. I don't think I got to choose them. I think it's like something that happens. And the way that you don't choose your kids, you give birth to them. You know what I mean? That's what it feels like. It feels like so similar that I don't know how to explain it to people. Like I didn't choose my kids. I just had them. Okay, I didn't choose my friends. My inner circle just happened. And so like, it's hard to explain in a world where people are just constantly settling for friends and otherwise. But that's why when people have conversations, like I remember the Guts and Griffith conversation, like Guts and Griffith were friends. They were friends. That's why the betrayal was so evil, because they were friends. Now, people say, no, they were never friends because real friends wouldn't do that to each other. I think that's true for non-real friends. I think you can have friendships where I'm like, we weren't really friends because look at the way they treated me. And my real friends have treated me badly. So two things can be true at once. That sentence can make sense, can be used both ways, is what I'm trying to say. It's just context. Context.
Up to this point, my partner and I had a really good relationship. We used to hang out as a group of 4. I got along quite well with my partner's friend's girlfriend, and we were building a camaraderie there. And she was actually a very good friend of a good friend of mine, so I felt a kinship towards her.
Did you think about the other relationships that might suffer when you're weighing up what to do?
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely. I thought about the relationship between the boys. They're 2 men in a small ethnic community. They're like brothers. I thought about this blossoming relationship between my partner's friend and his girlfriend. I thought about his girlfriend, who was a friend of mine. She had recently had some problems with her family. Her mother had been in hospital. She was at a quite vulnerable point in her life.
Okay, let me tell you this. Because Chessa, what if you see your friend being cheated on but don't have tangible proof, like a photo? I've heard stories where people don't believe their friend. Listen, you know what I've learned mostly in my life is people don't believe children when they say they're being molested. People don't believe in front of their eyes something they witness. It doesn't matter if people believe you. What matters is that you did the right thing. That's where I'm at. I don't care if you believe me. I'm just telling you this happened. So now you know, you can do what you want with it, but it's not my responsibility anymore. I told it to you. And that's where I'm kind of at. We're like, look, I don't get involved in everybody's business, but I have to clear my side of the street. And so that's where I think it comes down to. Because I'm sick of the world telling me, like, I wish people would tell me the truth. I wish people would tell me things. But like, if you're not going to believe me, what good is it? So I did what I needed to do. Now you can make the decision.
Tim, you're a philosopher with the Ethics Centre. What is a moral dilemma?
I think some people get confused in the difference between a moral problem and a moral dilemma. So on the one hand, a moral problem or moral temptation is where we've got a choice between doing the right thing and doing the wrong thing. Like, I pick up some money, should I give it back to the person who dropped it or should I keep it? I'd suggest as an ethicist you do the right thing. A dilemma is different from that. A dilemma is when we have 2 or sometimes more different things pulling us in different directions, where there's no obvious right answer. We might have 2 things that we think are good that are clashing with each other. We might have 2 duties, a duty to a friend or a duty to not harm somebody, that we might not be able to satisfy them both with the decision that we make. So a moral dilemma is one of those situations where no matter what we do, we feel like there's going to be some kind of compromise or some kind of trade-off.
Is it different from an ethical dilemma?
We draw a distinction between moral and ethical at the Ethics Centre, where moral is the way that we see the world through the lens of good and bad. And that's informed by our upbringing, by our culture, our family, our peer group, religion. All of these things shape the way that we see the world. The ethical level is more reflective. Ethical is a way of us examining the reasons for acting in certain ways.
Yeah.
And an ethical dilemma is similar to a moral dilemma, except we have more language to be able to tease apart the different dimensions and try to find some good reasons for choosing one course of action over another.
And from a philosophical perspective, when we talk about personal morals and societal ethics, you can think about your personal moral, like cheating is bad. And then you still have to weigh the dilemma of the ethical implications and impacts of telling the person they're being cheated on or getting involved in people's personal life. Like example, depending on the situation, I don't always get involved, right? Like I'm not, every time I see like a child being abused in public, I don't always know that like I should call the cops because like, is this going to make it worse for the kid at home? Is the kid going to have a problem? Like if I call the cops on this family, is the kid going to get beaten even worse? Or is this kid have a better chance of growing up fast enough to leave house and not have to deal with it? Should this kid be taken away or is it better for them to stay at home? Like the problem with abuse is that the systems in place don't always protect the children in need. Or if I know someone's being cheated on, but I've never met them and I don't know what they look like and I don't even know their name, but I have a way of finding out, should I find out? Should I do a weird stalking due diligence? Like, should I Google? Should I find out who they are to tell them? Or should I just like, mind my business? And this is the problem that I think we're all facing is like, I try to weigh like how many harms are being done. And the problem is like people aren't doing that. So people do this thing where they go, oh, well, wrong is right, right is right, or right is right, wrong is wrong. But like that's not true because we live in a subjective reality. So there is no moral objectivity to this. There's only the context and the situation in which it is. You know how many women have come forward to tell me things that have happened to them? And they're like, please don't tell anybody. Yeah, but now you're putting me in a moral dilemma where now I know this person did something and now as a public figure, I can't say anything. But also like, do I trump the victim's wants for the betterment of society? Like, should I warn people about this thing that happened? But then I don't have any evidence. I was just told. So now the question is, will the flack come on me? And will I be, you know what I mean? So there's like multi-layers of all these decisions we have to make constantly. And I don't think it's always simple. And I think that's the dilemma. It is actually really hard to be a good person,
Are moral dilemmas common?
I would be very surprised if people go through life without experiencing at least a serious moral dilemma a few times in their life.
Definitely.
Leah, you found out your friend's boyfriend was cheating on her. What did you decide to do?
I decided to approach him first. That was my first port of call. I contacted him via message and said, I've seen something I shouldn't have seen. I think you know by now because my partner had let him know that I saw the photo. And he said, I need you to keep it to yourself. I said, you know me, I am the world's worst liar. I don't think it's going to be possible, but I don't want to tell her. I would like to give you the opportunity to tell her. He said that wasn't going to happen and that if I said anything, all hell would break loose.
Ooh, see the threat? See the threat?
Conversation concluded with him deleting all of our messages and blocking me on social media and everywhere.
You also turned to a mutual friend for advice.
Wait, she's talking about the man who cheated, right? So not her partner? Or is she talking about her partner? No, she's not talking about her partner, right?
Did they say?
I did turn to a mutual friend. I posed the question. I said, if you had a partner and you found out they weren't the person that they said they were, what would you do? She knew exactly who I was talking about. Women know things. She knew that I was talking about our mutual friend and her partner. And she said, tell me everything.
The man that cheated, got it.
She decided to tell our mutual friend.
What happened when the girlfriend was told?
She received the information and she confronted him. At first he denied it and she pressed him
What a
and
liar.
he admitted it. They tried to stay together for a short while, but then ultimately broke up.
Damn.
What happened as a result was that the messengers got shot, myself and my friend.
Tim, how do we know?
So that goes along. Chad said, what if your friend was the one cheating? Would you tell their partner? So I actually posed this question to my siblings as well. We've all talked about it, where some of the siblings feel like, oh, like I don't want to get involved. And some of the feelings are like, I would protect you over anybody else. And then some of the siblings are like, well, I want to protect the person that I love. So it depends. Like, if my friend, so I'm trying to think of a situation, but like if my friend was cheating on someone and I knew their partner, they know I'm going to tell their partner, right? Like you can't bring that to me. If my friend is cheating, but I don't know their person yet, well, I don't know how that would happen, but like, I guess that could happen. But if that happened, then I would assume my friend was coming to me and saying, Britt, I'm really going through it. I cheated on this person I'm dating and I'm lost. I don't know what to do with myself. Okay. Then I'm saying, okay, then we have to go into what did you do this? What's happening? What's going on? And then we'd get to the root of it. And then I'd say, well, you know what you have to do, right? And they'd say, yeah, I have to tell them. I'd say, right. So you have to tell them. Okay. And then the question is like, well, how do I tell them? I assume they're coming to me to help them tell them. Now, I'm trying to think of a situation where, like, because in my family, where there has been cheating, we put it out there. Like, we put it out there. Okay. And so I just know from our lived experience, we have wanted to protect because the person who was cheated on, the problem is like the person who was cheated on decided to stay with the person and decided to cut everybody off instead. And that was hard. So we have been in that circumstance as a family where now people pretend like it didn't happen because that's what the couple wanted. But I see that as a form of manipulation and abuse to alienate the woman he cheated on from her family. And then to say the only chance of us hanging out is if you don't talk about this thing. So now you're putting us in a social situation where we're going to pretend this thing didn't happen, even though it was like the most disgusting type of cheating, the most disgusting display of cheating, the most disgusting abusive cheating I've ever seen in my life, right? Truly like horrible. And now we have to pretend as a family it didn't happen? Absolutely not. I can't do that. And I'm not going to play games with you because like it does such a disservice to everybody involved. The problem is that there's kids involved. So then the idea is like, well, if I call them out on this thing, then I won't be able to see the kids. I hear you. I get it. Because I don't get to see the kids, for the record. I don't get to see the kids. But if those kids ever see my channel, they'll know that Auntie Brittany did the right thing. And Auntie Brittany I can trust her because she stood up for what was right. And my hope is that one day they will see this YouTube channel and they will see that, okay, Auntie Brittany, she's a real one. She did the hard thing because it was hard. And that's what I'm hoping. That's my only hope. While everybody else ignored the thing that happened, maybe one of the adults in the room did the right thing. That's what I'm hoping happens. Because yeah, of course. But like, you know, who knows? We're years away from those kids having free access to the internet. Because right now I know they're fucking heavily censored. But one day those kids will find the internet. And one day they might see these videos, right? And that's the hope. And that's also probably the fear of the parent, that they will see these videos. I'm sure it haunts them every day, thinking like, oh, they're going to find Auntie Brittany's YouTube channel. She's out here saying everyone's business. Well, you should have done it. Okay? You should have done it. Now, I will say, my farm brother, who is married to a wonderful lady, I always told him, like, if you cheated on her, bro, all hell would break loose because we love this woman so much. And same thing, like, hell would break loose for the victims. And I know this woman also like wouldn't just pretend it didn't happen. Okay. Because also they're not in an abusive relationship. I think the dilemma here is my farm brother is married and they're in a healthy relationship. They're not in an abusive relationship, which means that she's allowed to be angry with him. She's allowed to hold him accountable. So that's the problem is like when you're in an abusive relationship, you're not even allowed to be mad that you were cheated on because they'll blame you. Oh, you neglected me. You were the reason. So that's why I think it's so interesting when we have these conversations about abuse. Like cheating is abusive. And it takes, like, if you're going to be confronted, look how he lied. See how he was confronted and he lied and then he eventually fessed up? That right there, blaming other people, not admitting it, you're not allowing the person you cheated on to even face this reality in a real way. So again, if my friend was cheating on someone, the context would matter, but it's always wrong. The context would matter for how I handled it, but it's always wrong. Okay? You're basically saying I beat my partner. Like these things are the same to me. So it's always wrong. The question is, what do we do now, right?
Oh, if we should get involved in other people's lives, is that sort of a moral dilemma in itself?
It certainly can be, because often doing the right thing can come at a cost. And often doing the right thing can harm ourselves or other people as well.
Yep.
So we need to be really careful about knowing when it's safe to engage. Mm-hmm. But I think we need to weigh up what our ultimate responsibilities are, what our obligations are, and whether we feel as though there is genuine harm that is going to be done if we don't do something. Often it can be tempting to be faced by a dilemma and say, look, I'm just going to move on and ignore it. I call this the Dumbledore thing when he says to Harry, look, not making a decision is still making a decision. So a part of ethics is taking responsibility for our actions, and sometimes that means taking responsibility for our inactions. But I don't think we all need to be...
Yeah, actually, like when you come to your parents and say some harm has been done in the family and they do nothing about it, that's an action. You're making a choice. You doing nothing about it is an action.
Moral heroes. We don't all need to be moral martyrs. We don't need to throw ourselves into things if we feel as though it's going to cause serious ramifications or harm to ourselves or others.
We hear this term moralizing. What can happen when we do that?
There's a difference between being moral, which means having a clear set of values and principles that guide how I behave, and moralizing, which is projecting my values onto others. Now, there are a lot of moral values that we have in common, but there's a lot of difference as well. So moralizing can become a problem when we're imposing our particular view of right and wrong onto other people, and sometimes that may not be entirely justified. There might be legitimate different perspectives.
Okay, I'll give you an example. If the family had done something different, if the person in the family who had cheated confessed, took responsibility, healed their marriage, and moved on, I would not have to bring it up all the time. I would never would have told the internet. Sometimes people ask me like, Brittany, how does your family feel that you're telling their stories? I don't give a fuck. Because the stories I tell are about abuse and bigotry. I don't give a fuck. Like, okay, I try to do it respectfully. I try to not make it clear who I'm always talking about. I try to be honest. But when we're talking about bigotry and abuse, you had opportunities. It's not like I didn't keep this private for many years. It's not like I haven't been doing this for decades and decades, begging my family to fucking face themselves and change. So since they won't, okay, we have one life to live on earth and I'm trying to do something here. I'm trying to seriously break some generational curses. You had opportunities, you didn't take them. Okay? So that is what it is. Okay? Chet said, are you moralizing your family? That's not the way I think you would use that word. Right? You can't I don't think that's the way you would use the word. Moralizing is more like, hey, we're having a discussion and now you're moralizing the behavior. I'm not projecting my values onto my family. I don't care what they do. It's about what I do. That's different. I don't think that's what he means to say, right? Because I'm not moralizing my family. I'm telling you my values and I'm living my life in accordance to those values. I am not making a prescription nor telling my family how to act. I'm saying my story is wrapped up in their story, but in order to tell my story, I have to tell parts of theirs. And people will say, don't tell other people's stories, but they do that to silence victims, not to actually like moralizing somebody would be like, oh, I think this religious group is so disgusting because like, oh, vegans are so gross because I want to eat meat and they won't let me. Like, or vegans saying like, you shouldn't eat meat and you're a bad person. That might be moralizing, but even though I don't think so, right? Like, I think it depends on the situation. Like, oh, you're moralizing my behavior. Like maybe it's when it doesn't count. Like, maybe I would think like, oh, you're moralizing. Like, why are you moralizing it? Like, oh, you let your kids watch TV. Like you could moralize it, I guess, but you don't have to. So I think it's about the wisdom and discernment of when to moralize, right? So like maybe if I could see myself being, hey, why are you moralizing this? Like, why are you making it a big deal that I'm wearing red shoes? You know what I mean? I think that's how I would think about it, maybe.
That come to bear on these things. The other aspect of moralizing is sometimes we can feel like we're getting involved or we want to get involved with issues that we don't have no connection to them. We can see something on social media. This happens all the time. Somebody on the other side of the planet does something really terrible. We get outraged, we moralize, we project our values onto that. We want to see them punished. We have no relationship. We are not connected to the community. We're not even connected to the people who were wronged. We may not even be in a position where we are the right kind of person to respond, but we still feel the outrage, we're still moralizing, and we still want to find some kind of satisfaction. And that can cause all sorts of ways that we try to seek that feeling of satisfaction, even if it doesn't actually resolve the problem.
Nick, you breed British bulldogs. It's a breed that's often associated with some breed.
See, I could argue I'm casting judgment on breeders as a point of harm reduction and ethics, but I don't know about this person in particular. Like I don't mean that this person is evil, but I would say like I am against all breeding, generally speaking.
Breathing and other health problems. Yeah. Have others judged you for what you do?
That people might, as Tim referred to, people like to pile on social media or stuff like that.
But I would say, and this is very important, for the same reason you might be against breeding or breeding pugs or dogs that have trouble breathing, you could argue creating disabled babies is unethical because those babies will struggle. So be very careful with why you think you're against people breeding certain animals into existence, because babies are animals. Human babies are animals. So you have to be very careful about this idea of like, are you saying that no disabled people should have babies because the babies might be disabled, right? Because not all babies born of disabled parents are disabled, right? And then people who are not disabled give birth to disabled babies. So Even with dogs, they'll say, oh, don't bring dogs into the world like Frenchies who have trouble breathing because it's unfair to the dog. Well, maybe. And also, I would say breeding is more unnecessary because there's so many dogs that need to be adopted, but you could also make that argument for babies, that you shouldn't be having human babies because there's so many babies that need homes. But also a lot of adoption agencies are just trafficking agencies. So there's also that part of it. You know, there's a lot of ethical layers to this, which is why I say I don't believe in objective morality, because if it was so clear, we would just do the right thing. Like, what's obvious to me is that it's not clear what's right or wrong, which is why we have been arguing the same problems for thousands of years because we just haven't figured it out.
But I guess they're a breed that's known to have health problems, so I can understand why people would have that stigma attached to it.
Are there things you've observed in the industry that don't sit well with you?
Wait, Chad said no one is breeding humans to have compromised airways on purpose. I think that's different. I don't think that's true. I think when you have a baby, you are breeding children with problems that if your doctor says you are 90% more likely to bring a baby who struggles this medically, that is you bringing a baby. Like, that is you taking the chance, right? Or like you could say, I guess you're saying it's not a guarantee, but there are some guarantees. I mean, that's why when we talk about abortion rights, disabled activists ask us not to talk about like aborting a disabled baby, because you're now saying that disabled babies are unwanted. But some people will say, oh, like it's really awful that in certain places like Down syndrome's eradicated. But for other people, they're like, why are we making babies so that are disabled on purpose? And then this is the idea of like, this is why it's a hard conversation. Because if you are in pregnancy and the doctor says your baby's going to be disabled and you have that abortion, you are having it because the baby is disabled. And so you might as well screen babies for disability, right? But then you're screening them for disability so you can abort them, which is why pro-lifers are like, don't screen my baby, I don't want to know, because they don't want to make the choice. And then the baby will say, so you did know I was going to come out. This is why I'm saying it's so hard, because like, I agree, like breeding those certain dogs into existence, knowing they'll have, but yet the life of that puppy that exists is like beautiful. We love those puppies, right? So again, like when we have these conversations, I see why there's like a feeling of difference, but I think for most people, it doesn't feel that different. But I wonder if the feeling is what matters. We'll talk about this tomorrow with Alex O'Connor and motivism and talking about like, does it feel different? Chad said some level of disability will always exist in everyone's genetic code. Pugs such have inbred over and over without regard for their ability to breathe. Is more comparable to incest. That might be a good comparison. Like, certain like types of procreation. Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah. Chat says breeders also breed to make money. I don't think other than maybe surrogacy as a human equivalent. Well, should we? Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot of layers to this for sure. A lot to be discussed. Chat said people who are breeding dogs have very different goals and standards than what people would find acceptable for humans. I think there could be parallels, but I don't think it's one-to-one. Yeah, Chat said I think I get what you are saying. It's more nuanced. Who are we to say what life is worth living? I mean, that's really the question is like, because, okay, the question is, do people have issues? Okay, do the same people who have issues with him breeding dogs with disabilities have problems with breeding dogs? Because I would say I have an ethical problem with dog breeders, period. And then on top of that, breeding dogs who struggle. But I would also say that I do have a problem with people having lots of children for ethical reasons, similar to breeding dogs. And then on top of that, I have a struggle with people that fetishize having disabled children as a way to feel better about themselves because they think like, oh, I had you even though I thought you were going to be disabled. I like take a struggle with the ego element of procreating. And also on top of that, I'm a little bit of a hippie where I think like working this hard to have a child when you didn't have it naturally is also a layer of weird to me. Like, why are you spending $80,000 to $100,000 to have a baby implanted? Like, one of the women I worked for as a nanny had like, I think she said 6 or 7 implantations that all had to miscarriage. They miscarried until she finally found a viable fetus to carry. And I just didn't get it. I was like, what is the point of this? Like those parents, no judgment, but kind of like a level of like confusion to me, who take pictures with all the needles of all the amount of work they had to do to have one baby. Like, you just brought your baby into a homophobic, racist, capitalistic fucking hellhole with genocide. And then you're like, look at all the sacrifice I did to have you. And it's like, thanks, I guess. Now does that baby have to be grateful for the rest of their life because you decided to spend your life savings and all of this medical care to have a baby? Like, you know, it feels like another version of pro-life where it's like, what if I had aborted you? Okay. Like, am I, you know what I mean? Like, now it feels like you're almost, again, I don't like this sacrifice mentality parents have of like, look at all the sacrifice I did to have you. I don't know. I guess. I mean, just sounded like you really wanted it. What does this have to do with me? I don't know. There's something there that is confusing to me about it, but I don't think these people are evil. I think these people are human. I wonder if they've really thought about why they're doing it though. Why are you working so hard to have a baby? Like, what is so important about having a baby given what it's costing you? And like, what is that, right? Chet said, we're all on the same spectrum philosophically, even though each person in their context are likely to have vastly different relationships with those choices. Yeah, for sure. Right? Chet said, I'm anti-breeding in general, so that may influence my opinion. Oh, we are definitely all being influenced by some variation of like why we think like, okay, like relax, you're going too far. And that's the part that is so interesting about, that's why I wanted to watch this with you guys, because I knew it would be good. But this idea of like, what is ethical? What is good? Like, what makes sense? Like, where is the line? And again, without like throwing people under the bus, I don't mean to ever come across like these parents who so desperately wanted children weren't good. I just think the way we tell ourselves stories about babies, like, I know in some bubbles, they call them, I think, rainbow children, where it's like the babies you have after a miscarriage. But growing up Catholic, like, a miscarriage is just a biological part of reality. Like, you have miscarriages and it's sad. And also it's just, like the next baby you have after isn't a miracle baby. It's just the baby that took. So I also thought that was really interesting. The way people are like, this baby is so special. This baby is so important. We wanted this baby so badly. And I'm like, I guess like, and I don't mean to talk badly about those parents, but it's like, what is this attachment you are having to making this baby already feel like you're kind of making that baby feel guilty? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like a weird sense of guilt you're putting on the baby. And I don't think people know it. But like, when you are obsessed with your child, you're putting a level of awareness on that baby. That same mother that I nannied for, who had this baby after all those miscarriages, also one day when she came home from work was really frustrated that he didn't pay attention to her. And she's like, man, all this work I went to have him and he doesn't even look at me. And I was like, see? It feels like you're not really understanding that you're bringing a baby into the universe who's like a baby. She also said, like, I couldn't find a man, so I made a man. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, why are you having this beautiful baby who, by the way, like, she was generally a good mom, but do you see the problem here? I think people can be generally good parents and bad parents. Like, my parents were generally good, but they were also kind of bad. You know? And Chet says, any thoughts on antinatalists who think procreation period is wrong? No thoughts, just I'm not one. So just for the record, I'm not an antinatalist. I think you should have a baby. I just think you should have a baby and think about it first. In the same way, like, you should get married. Just make sure it's the right person. You should have a baby. Just make sure it's for the right reason. You know, but I think antinatalists, like, it's a very, in my mind, like, copy philosophy, but I think most philosophical frameworks are pretty copy. I want the answer that's not coping. That's what I'm looking for. When it comes to ethical dilemmas, how are we coming to conclusions that isn't coping? And that's what I'm trying to figure out, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I see dogs that can't breathe, stuff like that, when people speak to me, I speak to a lot of people. And when they tell me tales of, you know, dogs dying young, dogs that can't breathe, I mean, I get sad. I love the breed. People in Australia, and we're very lucky, I mean, they're called fur kids for a reason because they're like kids for many people. My dogs are like that for me. There's lots of people out there that I speak to and their pets are like their life, their kids. So that's how I feel about it. And I get sad and I want to do better, so.
Do you feel like people do enough research before buying a dog?
I think you've got to look at it holistically. A breeder couldn't pile on the buyers and say they haven't done their research, so hence they deserve what they get. I think that there's a pathway towards improving the breed, doing the right thing. I think that it's all the stakeholders that are relevant to that, the whole industry per se. I guess they've all got a responsibility to do better, educate themselves, work within frameworks and structure, and yeah, that's what I think should happen, yeah.
You call yourself an ethical breeder. What about other breeders?
I think it's important not to, not to cast aspersions upon others. I can only speak for myself. I think that there's room for improvement across the board. There's room for improvement in my knowledge base. I'm always wanting to learn. I think most people want to do the right thing. I think that's an inherent quality in most Australians, I would think. That's what I believe. Yeah.
Who do you think should be responsible for good dog breeding?
Once again, I think it comes back to all the stakeholders. You know, we've all got a stake in it. The buyers, it would be great if there was more educational resources. I think that vets, you know, as well, if there was more structure, I think legislative bodies, they can get involved. And there's a lot of us out there that are crying out for structure. We'd like structure. And we love the dogs. The dogs can't advocate for themselves.
What do you think buyers want in a dog like a bulldog? What are they looking for?
If you haven't had a bulldog before,
Which, by the way, cutest fucking dogs. My partner and I talked about this when we were first dating, where I was like, oh my God, I love a dog that can't breathe. And he was like, that's fucked up. I was like, well, I mean, I think they're cute. I'm not saying I want them to not breathe. But he is very passionate about dogs, like being able to breathe. Like he's very serious about it. And I think they're the cutest fucking dogs in the whole world. I love a little snorty dog. And like, that's the thing is like, I don't want my dog to suffer, but I admit it's really fucking cute. Why is it cute? I don't know. Why is there like near-death experience of struggling to breathe cute? Fuck, somebody explain it to me because I don't know. But it is. They're just kind of goofy. And I always loved a little Frenchie and I always love a bulldog. And I just love like the uglier the dog, the cuter the dog, you know, kind of thing. But that's the thing, you know, I would never want to do that on purpose though. They're so cute.
once you get slobbered on and you cuddle one, that's the only breed you want to have, right?
Chad said it's cute because it triggers our care and instinct. Yeah, maybe it is actually. Yeah, maybe it's just like they're so like vulnerable and I'm just like, oh, you're so cute, let me take care of you. And then I just think like, oh man, but I would never want to do that on purpose to an animal, you know?
Their temperament's like sensational. They're great family pets. They're not aggressive that I've heard of. They're wonderful, man. They're like, couldn't have enough of them in my opinion. So yeah, I think they just want a healthy dog and a happy dog. You know,
well, healthy is questionable, right?
Monica, you bought your bulldog Maggie 9 years ago. Yep. Did she face any health issues?
A lot of health issues I've had with Maggie. It first started with her getting cherry eye that she developed. Obviously, going into the breed, I knew, oh, there's my baby.
Oh.
I'd done my research. I probably hadn't thoroughly done as much research as I could have. I had purchased a lot of books. I'd done a lot of research. And she's had probably about nearly 12 eye surgeries now on her eyes.
Whoa.
Done.
Did you ever feel judged for choosing a bulldog?
Definitely, especially as more health issues came up. At the stage I had a partner when I'd purchased her and then we had separated, so I took on the cost of all her vet bills, all her insurance. I've spent probably about $20,000 to $30,000 on Maggie to this day, and I say you really need to take into account that if there is health issues with these breeds, which they do come with, you need to be prepared to spend the money for your dog.
You know, that's what I think about too. Growing up in the bubble I grew up in, like we loved our animals, but my parents always made it clear like animals are not humans. And so like the dogs got surgery, the dog went to the vet, the dog did this. But there was definitely like a level of how much are you willing to spend on a pet? And like Indiana, I've been taking care of Indiana my whole life and I've never shared her expenses with a partner. And I never thought I would. I never even considered it because she's my companion. And I have spent a pretty penny on Indiana. I don't know how much, not that much for sure, but maybe like, I don't know, like $10,000, maybe a little less, you know, on Indiana over the last decade plus. You know, it's been a second, but and we would be willing to do it again. Like we've talked about this as a married couple. Like what's the level? Like we're mostly concerned about her quality of life. You know, if her quality of life gets bad enough, we'll think about putting her down, obviously, in the same way that when my quality of life goes, I'd like to be put down. You know, I've advocated for this for many years for myself. I would want to advocate it for her. Like life's not good enough to suffer through it that hard. You know what I mean? Like, no offense. Like there's a level of suffering I think is so valuable and valid. But at a certain point, girl, it ain't that good. You know what I mean? Like, take me out. I'm good. But again, it's just everyone's at a different, you know, everyone has a different opinion on like what is worth enduring. And that's up to the individual. Okay. But yeah, I think that is something people don't also talk about when they're dating people, is like, what is your opinion on animals and your connection to those animals, and what do you want to spend on them? And that includes children, by the way. A lot of people take for granted like spending money on your kid. I think some people try to overcompensate and spend too much on their kid, like unnecessarily. But also there are some basic needs that a child doesn't always get globally that I think a lot of us have to contend with when we have children. Will we be able to care for those kids? Guys, when I looked into adoption, so many of the disabled babies that needed adoption were parents who wanted their children but couldn't afford to take care of them. So they asked for open adoption or visitation with the kids. And I'm like, yeah, we should just be paying these families. Like, why are these families putting their kids up for adoption in hopes for them to have a better life? Like, a lot of the babies that Americans, that US people buy from other countries, those parents don't want to give up their kids. They just can't feed them, or they think it's a better life for their kid, but they want their babies. Why are we taking people's babies from them? You know, there are people who genuinely want to give up their children. Okay, fine. But so many of the babies in adoption centers, like, their parents don't want to give them up. That's why I think like adoption's really kind of fucked, because like, what do you mean? That's why people call it human trafficking, because like, what do you mean you wanted your baby? What do you mean you just didn't have the money? What do you mean? Like, we need government intervention here. Give those people money.
They're not you buy it and it ends up in the pound because of the health issues.
Oh, that's devastating. People who put their animal companions in the pound because they're too much to take care of. This is why you have to talk about this when you're dating people. Okay? Hey, like, we're never getting rid of or moving. Example, I told you guys, I'm immigrating to Croatia, but to be clear,